Good morning, everyone. It's fantastic to see you. Well done for getting here. I enjoyed the Elizabeth line. I hope you did too. My name's Rachel Solomon-Williams. I'm the Executive Director at the Aldersgate Group, as Lucy said. For those who aren't familiar, we're a cross-sectoral alliance of major businesses and academic institutions and civil society organisations looking to accelerate progress on climate and nature across the UK and with the government. With no further ado, I'd like to introduce our wonderful panel. I'm not even going to say their names and organisations, but leave them to do that for themselves. We are here to talk about climate leadership in 2026. It's the most topical thing we could be thinking about on a day when the Climate Change Committee has just released its latest progress report on how the UK is doing against its carbon budgets. Spoiler alert, I think we're on track to meet carbon budgets 4 and 5. After that, it's beginning to look a bit difficult. So do go and have a look at that after this panel if you haven't already seen it. We're also, of course, in the throes of a leadership challenge at the top of government, and it'll be really interesting to see kind of where that goes in terms of positions on climate, energy and nature. But what we're here to talk about today is more about the business perspective, and we also have a fantastic City Council representative who will introduce herself as well. So what does it mean to be a climate leader at kind of organisational level and really on the ground in terms of delivery? We're going to go not in the order of where everybody is sitting, but start with Marion. Can I hand over to Marion?
Sure. Hi, my name is Marion Doria. I'm the Chief Sustainability Officer at M&G, but I also sit as a non-exec director on the board of USS, which is the largest private sector pension fund in the UK. So look at this from an asset owner as well as asset manager perspective. I should also say that I spent 5 years as global head of risk and sustainability for a steel manufacturer. So I've seen the issues of transitioning across the real economy as well. Do we need climate leadership in 2026 and what should that look like? Well, of course we need climate leadership in 2026, arguably more than ever, but more than leadership, I think we need ownership. And what I mean by that is we need to move away from what was a very important era of setting ambition and galvanizing action to delivery and ownership. And so we need to start thinking about what is the operating model, what's the right model for delivering some of these solutions. We have spent years examining the problems. So everyone here has probably heard about the issues with grid connections or electricity pricing. We can all recite what these problems look like, but who's actually tasked with solving them? And so I think for me, it's really the type of leadership where we're moving from that ambition to implementation. Interestingly, I was speaking to somebody who specializes in recruitment for sustainability leads recently, and she was explaining that for most of the FTSE 100, the mandates that she's seeing now are much less about people who can sit on a stage and talk about ambition and much more about real practitioners who are able to get into the business, understand the processes that the businesses are running, and begin to transform those organizations and really do the hard work. I think aligned with that is also this piece about misinformation. There is so much, frankly, rubbish being talked about the climate transition, the cost of net zero, etc. And I think for leaders, it's beholden to us to not be quiet about this. I think we've all talked about how, you know, in the current climate, we all have to kind of not speak about sustainability and perhaps use different language. Okay, but I do think it's really important to sit in forums like this and start tackling some of that misinformation about what are the actual costs of not transitioning and how are those going to be felt across the economy. So I think there's really something for all of us to engage not only with all of our stakeholders, but also the political arena, because I think this really does need to be a policy-led transition, and then private sector can come in behind that and really galvanize.
Thank you. I couldn't agree more about needing to speak up. Fantastically important. We're going to go to Erin next from JLL. What does it mean to you to be a climate leader in 2026?
Sure, thanks. Very happy to be here. I sit both as the Chief Sustainability Officer at JLL, but also as the Executive Director of our foundation. And, I think for us, obviously, it's essential. It's not a question of will there be leadership, should we lead? But I do agree that the way we lead needs to fundamentally change. A lot of the barriers that we see in decarbonizing the built environment, or I see when I wear my hat as someone who's trying to get early stage climate startups from seed to stability to scale so that their solutions can hit the built environment, are real people problems, are real problems bridging the gap. So when we talk about the need to decarbonize buildings, the technologies are there. The business case is clear. In many instances, the capital is there. If it isn't the building owner capital, there are sources of capital that can be brought to bear. What's missing is the complexity of actually working through these projects. So time and time again, we are hearing things like, this is a tremendous challenge for tenants. It's a tremendous project management challenge. It's a tremendous stakeholder people challenge. So I think our leadership needs to pivot away from not just kind of the aspirations and the move towards action, but changing the way we deliver those things to close the very real people, practical implementation gaps.
Thank you very much. Now going to go to Councillor Susan Aitken, the leader of Glasgow City Council. Thank you for making the journey today.
You're very welcome. I'm delighted to be here. I'm Susan Aitken. I'm the leader of the City of Glasgow. So I guess as a democratically elected politician, the question of leadership is a particularly fraught one just now. But for me, as a leader who is committed to climate action, the key thing just now is to hold your nerve. Absolutely hold your nerve. Don't be swayed by the disproportionate amount of space that is given to deniers and delayers and charlatans of various stripes, because actually they don't represent what most people, certainly in the UK, want to see happen around the climate and around the impact for their communities and their places. So hold your nerve, but also trust your people. Have faith that the people that you are elected to represent are able to deal with different issues and different ideas at the same time, that they are able to cope with understanding that we do have a cost of living crisis, that we do have all sorts of global challenges right now, which they are rightly deeply concerned about, but also that we have the existential challenge of a climate crisis, and that means a great deal for their children and their grandchildren, even if not for them. And it's especially true of young people. Every polling evidence tells us that our young people are deeply, deeply concerned about the climate, and they want to see their governments at whatever level of governance committed to delivering climate action and delivering it in a way that is tangible and visible to them in their day-to-day lives. But we also need to demonstrate delivery. And we're not delivering fast enough. We need to demonstrate that tangible change. Even for folk who right now are going, yes, I know the climate's important, but to be honest, I don't know how I'm going to pay my bills this month. And I do not have the bandwidth to think about the climate, even if my street is flooded right now. Flooding is more of an issue than extreme heat in Glasgow. You might not be incredibly surprised to know, but having said that, it's a warm day in Glasgow today as well, if not quite as hot as here in London. So people are seeing the impact of climate change, but they are also facing huge challenges in their lives. So it's the job of politicians to make it clear that climate action has multiple benefits for communities and multiple benefits for places, for individuals and for society as a whole. So in a city like Glasgow, that means tackling poverty. It means giving people affordable energy and affordable heat, and delivering that in a way that is clean, but that doesn't make their fuel bills even worse. It means giving better access to high quality green space, for example, and it means retrofitting buildings and homes that are right now contributing to fuel poverty and to child poverty. And it means a transition to decarbonised transport, which is also massively improving air quality and therefore improving public health as well. So it's about making those very clear connections between the things that everybody understands in their life, and especially the cost of living and investment in climate action. Our costed net zero route map in Glasgow is costed to get an 80% reduction in our emissions by 2030. We're looking at a cost of around £35 billion worth of investment. Multiply that for cities across the UK. This is a vast amount of money that we are investing. It is up to politicians working with colleagues in the private sector to ensure that every single pound that is invested delivers multiple benefits and that people see and feel those benefits in their own lives. And we need to go faster. We need to go faster because the longer we keep talking about it and not actually delivering it, then the more we will lose people and we will lose that consensus for climate action, which I believe does exist in these islands.
Thank you, Councillor Aitken. It is really exciting to see what's happening in cities at this level. I saw data out today about London, the ULEZ, and that air quality has improved by 40% since it was introduced. It's a kind of great example of holding your nerve on something really important. Next, get this order right, I want to go to Adele Chaley from GSK. Hi, Adele.
Hello, good morning.
What does climate leadership mean to you in 2026?
Thank you, and good morning, everyone. I'm Adele from GSK. We are a biopharma company based in London, but we have operations globally. And what an important question, actually, to answer, and some great points have been made, so I'm trying not to repeat some of those, but leadership today, it's not easy, first of all. I think mainly 2 points. One that has been made, but I would like to build on. It's all about action, right? We talked about moving from ambitions and targets to actually doing what we need to do. So I think leadership today really looks like taking that action, prioritizing, making the hard choices, making those investments. But I think we also need to recognize that together with action, I think we need more transparency as leaders, because some of this action is complex, some of this action is messy, some of this action, really has trades-off, right? Some of the obvious things, and I talk from our industry perspective, we have been taking action for many years. So some of the easier, if there were any easy things, are done. So now we're really getting into the hard phase where there are trade-offs. And I think we need to keep going, keep prioritizing, but absolutely being more transparent about what is it that I'm doing? What is it that we collectively can do as an industry, for example? Where is it that we have direct influence versus where we need the market to change and how we can influence that even if we don't have that direct control? So I think it's action, it's transparency, and also, completely agree with you, holding the line, not losing the focus. Even if we are dealing with some trades-off today and we need to balance multiple things, but let's make sure we're not losing the focus on why we're doing this, where the science needs us to go. And for us, the fact that the climate crisis and nature loss are impacting health today already, right? So let's really remember why we're doing this, what is it that we need to do, and make sure that, whatever is going on today, we are holding the line and continuing to move towards that North Star.
Thank you. And customers and the public will really respond to that consistency as well, won't they? Last but definitely not least, the finance sector perspective. Hasina from Societe Generale.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. Happy to be here with you. I am completely in line with what you said. I'm going to give you my view as a banker. My bank runs all over the world for private people, for companies, for public. I mean, it's very wide. So I guess we have shown some leadership in the past by accelerating on the transition, taking on new risks, stopping some relationship. I mean, it's been a whole revolution. We have like 70% of our lending portfolio under decarbonation targets. So it's very exciting because most of it is business. This is what we wanted to show. This is not like I renounce, I stop, but I do a lot of business. So actually that part of this leadership went quite well. And now we feel we need to rethink about it. So I think it's a very good question that you're asking here. We need to rethink about it because first on the narrative, maybe we realize now with the backlash that some people did not really understand the same thing as we did. I'm very amazed when I hear people talk about like, you know, we don't have time or money or it's not the right time to save the planet. I mean, what are we talking about? So we need to come back to what it means to people. People are fed up if we tell them you can't eat that or you can't heat yourself. Or you, no, tell me what it brings for my health, what it brings at the end of the month, and all the things that Councillor, you described so well. But that's not exactly the narrative today. It's really a kind of punitive one. So I feel we need to reinvent this narrative. I feel as well that when we told people we need to reduce or to avoid an increase in temperature over 2 degrees by the end of the century, it meant nothing to people. In the same day, you can have plus 10 degrees, so what it means? Nothing. So again, that's the narrative. And for business, for companies, we need as well to show the narrative on value. This is about value creation, the transition especially. And now what's going to happen with the adaptation to climate change is about value preservation. So let's stick to that, because otherwise I see that people have trouble with their boards because they have a fiduciary duty to their shareholders to earn money in a way. And so they tell us, oh, you know, maybe it's not that good to do that right now. Maybe we should do that later. We have other priorities. We don't have other priorities. But again, that's one thing. The second thing for me is that you need to be pragmatic. So we are going to keep on with what we said we would do, but we are going to put much more emphasis on what works. Like, for example, electrification is a good one, but we need to go to the end of it, meaning not only the energy production, but the grids, the interconnection, all the storage, and the electrification of usage. I'm from France, and in France, we produce so much electricity at the moment that it is sold for zero some hours in the day, and it is exported, which is not a bad thing. But at the same time, we import a lot of gas because people, households, have gas for their heating, they have gas, the list is long. So we need to accompany that to the end of it, not only the energy generation, but all the value chain. So that's the second thing, and to finish on the narrative, of course, we need to innovate further. And we have a lot of new equations to crack, not easy ones. I'll just say one. Adaptation to climate change. Our clients tell us, yes, but I'm going to invest in something that will be a big debt and it won't produce cash flows. Okay, so it's going to avoid potentially some costs of some risks sometime in the future. That's very hard, you know, to agree on the return on investment. So we need to work on the cost of inaction, as you mentioned already, and make it clear that it is our responsibility as business to engage this investment.
Thank you so much. So lots of themes have come up already. A couple sort of recurring there. The focus on action and also the last point about understanding risk and pricing it in the right way. I want to ask our panel one more question before I come out and see if you guys have any questions. And the second question is, and building on that point about action, what's your organisation doing to scale and introduce innovative new ideas? I think, Adele, since you mentioned action the most clearly, I'll start with you.
Absolutely. Fundamental, right, to really focus on innovation. As I was saying before, I think we are at a point, definitely as a company and as an industry, where to keep acting, And further progress at this point truly requires innovation and collaboration. So very, very important. Maybe a couple of examples on how we're doing it. And as you might imagine, it has to do with our products, right? And product innovation. So to give you an example, often people are surprised when we say that 51% of our total carbon footprint actually comes from patients' use of one of our inhalers, right? And that is because of the propellant gas that is in it, and it takes the medicine out of the can into people's lungs. So it saves people's life, but it is a really potent greenhouse gas with warming potential hundreds of times higher than CO2. So innovation for us meant, let's look for ways to change that. Let's look for alternative gases, innovative gases, low carbon, that are not in the market today. So that is basically reformulating a perfectly fine product, trying to find innovative ingredients, which is something we are doing with success, which is fantastic. And another example, which is both product and kind of market innovation, is around solvent, which is another ingredient that we use that is high CO2 emissions. And we actually identified that we needed help from the startup community, from the innovators, to really identify or create solvents that are low carbon and that could meet pharma specifications. So we are working with startups and with Innovate UK to actually create that. So that's step one of our innovation. Actually, let's identify and create a product that would work. And then the second part that we're now looking at with our peers, actually, with other pharma, is how do we commercialize that? Is there a way where we can collectively give demand signal so that this new product can actually scale and become part of the market today? So different ways in which we are doing it, but absolutely fundamental to look at what's out there and to make sure that we don't just try to answer the problem with what we have today, because it might not be enough.
Thank you. Who would like to go next on this one?
I'm happy to. We're very fortunate at M&G in that our business model has a large patient capital balance sheet in the life insurance business, which then can facilitate the asset owner taking that and looking at some really innovative solutions. So I'll give you 3 examples. And it's everything, again, really fortunate to be able to deploy capital across various stages of a company's development. So we'll look at everything from scale-ups to listed equity. So if I take it sort of top down, on the listed equity space, we've taken a decision that we're not about portfolio decarbonisation, that we really want to see real-world change. So that means investing in some heavy emitting companies, and for that reason we'll sometimes see financed emissions go up, because I think it's so important that we're providing the capital and then really engaging with those businesses on how they transition to a lower carbon production method. But alongside that, we really need to think about the policy environment, because you can engage with companies until the cows come home. If you're trying to get them to operate in a way that's not economically sound, that's not going to happen, and it's not really in our fiduciary's interest to make them do that anyway. So one of the things we're looking at there is about the EU ETS and the policy measures within Europe to help to make green production in steel, for example, much more economically viable. So that's the one in the sort of big space. Coming more locally and in the private environment is a semiconductor plant that we invested in the north of England. And that's really interesting because it's much more sustainable production methods, but also the amount of job creation and the whole supply chain around that area is really fascinating, and also what they're doing around water usage, etc. So again, quite interesting. And then finally, we have our social investment fund, which looks at social housing and what we're doing in the UK and UK-based investment. So I think we have such a range of opportunities to invest not only in the transition itself, but also the supportive infrastructure for both climate and societal benefit.
Thank you. And you find that the rate of return you can achieve on those projects and organisations works for you as well?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're operating in the fiduciary interests of our beneficiaries. So we can't do things that don't make financial sense. Now, you can have a conversation about time horizons. So if you're maximising your quarterly or 1 year performance figure, would you invest in the same way as something where you're investing for the longer term? And so that is a conversation that we have around, operating our beneficiaries' longer term interests. But the thesis really is that the transition is underinvested and that people haven't quite realised the pricing disconnect. And so I think there's genuine opportunity there.
Thank you. Councillor Aitken.
Yeah, so the other side of that coin that you were just talking about is how public authorities, like councils, for example, get themselves into a position to be able to partner with institutional and private finance in a way that we can be confident will protect the public services that our citizens rely on. And that's something we're doing a lot of work on in Glasgow. We've made really strong progress on the business case for a climate investment vehicle, actually two, one a delivery vehicle, one an investment vehicle, that will allow us to confidently go to the market to bring in partners to do on the ground delivery that everyone's been talking about. In the first instance, focusing on heat transition and energy transition, in some challenging housing tenures and housing types, particularly our pre-1919 sandstone tenement stock in Glasgow. So we've created a net zero neighbourhoods model using one particular neighbourhood, which is that housing stock, which also has some real social challenges, high levels of deprivation, and put together a model which will simultaneously deliver the clean energy transition for those homes through heat into clean heat networks, but also retrofitting those homes at the same time so that we can be confident that people aren't going to be hit with the unintended consequence of much higher fuel bills. But we're putting in place these financial models that will give everyone confidence, all of the partners confidence that we can move forward, that the partners from the private sector are going to get that financial return, which we understand, as the public sector, we understand that that's necessary for them to be able to demonstrate. We hope that they can be patient about it, and that they can understand that at the same time, we need to demonstrate delivery of that social value and that equity benefit for our citizens. We're confident, I think, that we can find that sweet spot where we can come together and have that confidence. And we're hoping by the end of this year that those climate finance vehicles will be ready for us to go to market. We've been doing a lot of market testing, going back and making those changes. And on the point that was made earlier about that balance of risk, that's something that public authorities were usually very, very risk averse. And so we've really had to learn how to think differently about risk for approaching a major intervention like this, an investment of a scale that really the public sector hasn't done in a very, very long time, probably in over a century, when, the public sector was building gasworks and reservoirs and things like that. But councils haven't done that kind of thing for a long time. So we've had a lot of learning to do. We benefited from being part of the Global Resilient Cities Network, had a risk fellowship where local authorities around the world were connected with the insurance industry. In fact, we were very lucky to have an insurance professional from Howdens embedded with us in the council for 3 months. Huge amount of learning there about how we needed to make our propositions not just investable but insurable, and understanding how we could shift our risk appetite as a public authority while still protecting those public services. So I think that's really where Glasgow's innovating. It has been done elsewhere, it's been done in London, and it's been done in Bristol, but there's not many places in the UK have got to that stage yet where I think we have that maturity of understanding about how we can work with private and institutional finance over the long term to actually do that delivery piece that everyone's been talking about and start to make the difference, not just in reducing emissions, but delivering those benefits for communities as well.
Thank you so much. Erin, you're nodding.
Sure. I mean, I think a couple of examples related to what's been talked about, maybe one from the asset management side. So on the theme of action, LaSalle just a few months ago announced a $400 million fund that will focus on retrofitting and decarbonizing. And I think it's a direct response to the frustration that we see about decarbonization not happening as quickly as we would like. So that will be a very targeted fund that will carry out these retrofits and will be accountable to investors for maintaining the energy targets and the returns, right? So I think it's a really interesting example, and that is something that many, many, many asset managers could do. I think the other is we've increased our corporate philanthropy. So I sit as the head of JLL Foundation. This year we'll hit a $20 million milestone for the investment that we've made in climate startups. And we don't give them grants, we give them loans. We give them a 3-year cyclical support mechanism that helps them go from early idea to stability, but not yet to scale. And so I think any companies that are the scale of mine and others could have a look at their philanthropy. And they can say, what levers can we pull there? Can we increase? Can we expand? Can we put it in a different place that will enable the sorts of solutions that we need to see either in the market and the industry?
Thank you. Hasina.
Yeah, so for a bank like the one I described, we started with training everybody. It was compulsory, 5 different modules. It was a bit of a push internally, but it happened so that people are not experts at all, but they cannot say they did not know. And so that put them in movement, I think. So then we invested quite a lot. We said across the bank, there is a big push for financing the transition, financing very different and specific and granular categories, and people have that in their budgets and they are accountable. That's one thing. And then we invested money directly in some emerging leaders, hopefully. So new actors in the tech, for example, for green. Now we are trying to see whether we will invest in actors in the adaptation solution business, so we'll see. And also we invested in nature through an equity fund. It's not enough, of course, but this is the beginning and this is the way you learn, and then you can scale. And you can prove to your risk department that it can be a real business, and then you can really go above. What I found interesting is that my colleagues who were really specialists in the oil and gas business, really for decades, they realize now, because they have less and less possibility to finance fossil fuel in the bank, that their skills, the way they structure the risk they take, is completely compatible. And so we got very interesting mandates to be advisors, for example, in this country, in carbon capture and storage, in mega projects. And these people as well, who used to do non-recourse finance, or project finance, highly structured things, they are able to do the same to finance big forest projects, where you have nobody to pay back, but you will get the carbon credits, and you will have somebody paying over 20 years because they want this carbon credit. So that's a good thing to show that everything we learned can be reduced. So we are not, canceling something. So that's what we do in investment. And then we try to be very much solutions driven. One problem, 3 solutions, because there are a lot of problems. And so just to give you some ideas, what we do first, we get alliances. We have strong partners with multilateral institutions. They help us a lot with guarantees. this week there was the release of a catalytic capital repository that was launched, and it's a very good way to show for emerging markets. We say this is too complex to work with multilateral banks. We don't understand what they do. Well, now there will be this repository, and they will explain exactly what they have to offer, guarantees, whatever, and how you can access it. So it's not going to be easy, but at least we try to find these partners that will help us go a bit quicker to leverage what we are doing. And then for clients like SMEs, we try to do kind of a one-stop shop offer. Meaning we go and seek people that are able to do a diagnosis. Say, for example, they want to get solar panels. But in reality, they don't even know that they want to get solar panels. So we go and see them and we say, look, there's a partner that can do the diagnosis. And then you can decide whether you buy the electricity, you sell it to the grid, whether you own the panels, whether we own them and we lease them to you. But we show them simulations, so it's already done and on the table. Otherwise, they have no time, no skills. And then hopefully, if it goes right, then we enter as a bank, and because our goal is to finance that in the end. So a lot of on-the-shelf solutions have been put. With individuals, is not working that well. People need to understand better, and maybe now we'll see with the geopolitical tensions, with the heat waves, we'll see more interest. But at least on our side, we try and put the offer so that it's easier, make it easier.
Thank you. So lots of themes have come up. I'm interested that people seems to have come up in every comment somewhere in lots of different ways. Do we have questions in the audience for this incredibly experienced panel here? I've got some more if you haven't. One here. Hopefully we've got a roving mic. We now have a roving mic. Please could you say your name and organisation and be really clear because the acoustics are horrible.
Alexander Hayward, financial planner. What I'm particularly interested in is how you're going to get the catalytic finance to do much more investable NDCs, so we get much more of the...
Sorry, we can't hear these questions at all. Is it possible to
Can you hear me now?
point a microphone at me? Oh, here we come. Right. Thank you. Sorry, sir, can you try the question again?
To get investable national determined contributions, so from the catalytic finance you can actually get mitigation, adaptation and good design out with natural capital, so for the developing world you can actually have a future.
Gosh, how to get investable NDCs into natural capital? This is a complicated question. Does anybody feel confident on that?
So, I mean, I think there is something about what I was talking about how you can combine different aspects of climate delivery in a way that, I guess, that bundles together the stuff that is investable and will deliver revenue returns for private or institutional investors, which they need, but also the stuff that is much more about adaptation, about resilience, which by and large doesn't have such an obvious revenue return, and it is something that we've worked on a lot, and it was that something we've learned a lot from that insurance connection, is how you actually bundle together elements of risk and reward and get the balance between those. It is challenging. I'm not saying it's complex, but I think it is possible. So if we think about, for example, I'm going to give a slightly different example. We've invested a lot in Glasgow over the years in flood prevention, which is a massive part of our adaptation and resilience requirement. And a lot of that has been investment in green space, in green space, in tree planting. I don't know if you're hearing me. Thanks. Is that better? So a lot of that has been investment in green space and tree planting, as well as in different kinds of technologies. What that releases, though, is land that previously was undevelopable and then becomes developable. Now, I think obviously there's additional layers of challenge for the developing world, but it is possible to do it. And I think with investment banks, global investment banks particularly, working directly with cities to look at where their particular balances of risk and reward are, those investment packages can be put together in a way that are investable, as well as delivering the kinds of, I guess, less obviously financially tangible benefits, which by and large are the benefits that are needed for resilience and for communities.
I'll jump in on that as well, if
Mary,
you
thank
like. So I think for nature, this is one where we're talking about leadership and the importance of leadership in 2026. I think nature, I have sat in so many panels this week on nature. It's the most well subscribed. Everyone's turning up to the nature panels because no one has got this completely figured out, and we're all trying to work out what's everyone else doing. So there are a few things for me that need to be unlocked before we get this really investable set of nature solutions. The first is pipeline. We don't have a clear, defined, well-structured pipeline of opportunities in which we can start to deploy institutional capital. So the appetite is there. Bringing that pipeline together involves getting a range of stakeholders in one place to agree on a set of benefits and what that nature infrastructure looks like, and they're not used to talking to each other. So there's something about making sure that we have the right forums and someone who is prepared to lead and have those conversations. And I love the piece around how can we get the cities and the investment banks, but then also the local farmers and supermarkets and train companies who are affected by flooding, etc., to come together and figure out how do we share these benefits and who pays for what. So there's a piece there. Standards is another one. So I think we really need to start understanding what are those standards that have to apply. There's a genuine opportunity here, but also a risk that we suffer some of the same problems we saw in carbon credits, that we lose credibility quite quickly. So we're going to need to just make sure that we have that nailed down. The role of insurers is really interesting. So why would you not have a reduction in your premium if your business is now subject to less physical climate risk than it was before? But the insurers aren't there yet. So there's a lot of work, I think, to be done with the insurance community, because suddenly you're then putting a price directly on that investment because you're immediately getting that reduction in your insurance. And the final piece I'd say is around incentives. Large asset owners are all thinking about the amount of capital that they have to hold on their balance sheet to protect against climate risk that they're associated with. If there was a way that you could get a capital rebate if you were investing in a nature-based solution which reduced your exposure to climate risk, again, I think there's a wall of capital that then could be deployed into these nature solutions. But in order to do that, we need the pipeline and we need the standards in place once that wall of capital is deployed. So I think there's a big piece of work for all of us in different sectors to figure out how we join all of those dots and make this a lot more simpler, but the appetite absolutely is there.
Thank you. Hasina?
Yeah, I wanted to add something about water and well, is it really worth doing all these capex on water? And it reminds me of Adam Smith saying about the paradox of water and the diamond. He said it's strange because water has absolutely no economical value, but it has such a vital value. And diamonds have an endless value, but they serve no purpose. And so when we look at the return on investment for capex on water adaptation with industrials, the discussion is interesting because in my country, you pay 3 euros per cubic meter of water, nothing. When you have to do capex, it's several millions, so it doesn't add up. But you can't only look at the 3 euro, which is the material cost. You need to look at the all-in cost with the infrastructure, the pumps, the energy to vehicle the water. Then it's going to be 15 euro per cubic meter. But still, it's not enough, because the real question is not that. The real question is what happens if I don't do it. And one day, very soon, the municipality maybe will say, there is no water for tire production. It's for people and nature. So for 3 days, you will have to shut down. But you don't shut down for 3 days. You have to clean everything, so it will be 10 days. And then you can talk about 500,000, 1 million of cost. And there, the return on investment is much more natural to reach. So we need to reinvent a little bit and to understand what is the value of things to make it go through.
Absolutely, thank you. Anybody else? I think we're there. Next question. There's a lady here.
Thank you. Thank you. Hi, I'm Sue. Thank you for your very insightful sharing. I'm a board member of the London Donut Economics Coalition, and we are a group of volunteers who are working to build a thriving London that meets the social needs of everyone in London within the planet's limits. I would like to know and would love to hear what are the community initiatives run by your company, specifically targeting, highlighting risks or opportunities in making place-based investments, for example, in community energy projects, community youth centers with a view of investing in local place-based startups. Thank you.
Thank you, lovely question. I think Councillor Aitken's got a flying start on this one. Do you want to go first, and then everyone else can? Sorry, go ahead. Yeah.
So we're part of a network of cities, the C40 Thriving Cities Initiative, which is committed to exploring that exactly the model that you've described, where we're balancing social needs and climate impact and planetary impact, and it is. It's challenging. We're talking about, in many ways, completely altering the fundamental systems on which cities have operated for centuries in many respects. We've worked very closely with the University of Glasgow. They have a project, it's got Gallant, but it's Glasgow as a living lab, essentially, where we're working directly with local communities on exactly the kinds of projects that you're talking about, like community-owned energy projects, small scale, but community-owned energy. We've had a couple of issues of community bonds in Glasgow for solar and for tree planting. Community food growing initiatives are something that's very, very popular as well. And I think it goes back to the point I was making earlier about bringing people with you and making sure that you're connecting directly back to citizens and communities about the direct benefits to them. A lot of these initiatives they're going to make relatively marginal impact on reducing Glasgow's emissions, but what they are going to do is give communities a direct stake in that net zero journey, in that entire project of climate action, emissions reduction, community benefit, and show people directly how they can be involved in it, how they can influence it, how they can be part of making it happen as well. And I think that's a really important way to push back against what was being talked about earlier in terms of climate denial, and hold the line, hold the nerve by making sure that individuals and local people feel that this is something for them, something they're part of, something they can directly influence.
Thank you. Who'd like to go next? Adele.
Yes, happy to. Great question. And for us, it's really important that everything we do on the climate and the nature side really has a benefit on people and on the communities where we operate. So just to give you a couple of examples, in London, we're part of the Clean Air Foundation at the Camden Council, which is where we're based as a headquarters. So we're really, supporting that and the communities where we live. But then if I look at some of our big environmental projects, right? To give you an example, we have identified 5 manufacturing sites in India, Pakistan, and Algeria, where water is really scarce. So that is a risk for our business, and that's where, on top of reducing our water use, we actually are investing with local partners in nature-based solutions to replenish water at the basin level. But what we're really doing there is adding a community and social element to that project, so that we don't just look at nature, but we make sure that people get the benefit for the work we do on nature. And also we make sure that we look at the shared challenges at the basin level. And sometimes it's about access to clean water and hygiene and sanitation services. Other times it's about education on other things. So we're really trying to add and build in all our nature projects that social and community lens. And we were talking, I think, before about breaking silos between the different areas that are not used to talk. And we are also seeing this and really pushing internally at GSK, because we also have a global health team, and their starting point is not the environment, but is actually supporting. Sorry, I have a weird sound going on, but it's really supporting. Especially in lower developed countries, supporting health system resilience. So that they start from the resilience angle, and they have a lot of partners at investment at the communities from a health perspective. And now we are partnering with them and saying, how can we build the nature and environmental angle in those projects? So I think it's really important, again, to make sure that the benefits are felt, from people ultimately.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to comment on this? Yeah, Hazine?
Yeah, maybe I'll give you, I have several examples, but I'll give you my favorite one. It's about education, because we see in the transition that we are lacking a lot of expertise. And we see that many young people are out of school for different reasons. They were pushed in a system that was maybe a bit too intellectual, and we little bit gave up on manual skills. So bringing both together, we have a big program for schools that are exactly for the people that are between 16 and 25, and they were out of school, and they learn the skills for the energy transition. So for the moment, we have 30 schools in different regions, and each of them will focus on what is very important for the region. Sometimes it's about wood, sometimes it's about water and forests, and yeah, we have quite good hopes on this one.
Thank you, Mary.
Yeah, happy to. I'll not list off the various social initiatives that we have. We focus quite a lot on education as well. So Youth Council, we do a lot of work, and also looking at repurposing materials for social housing and how we can help with that. But perhaps just a wider point to underline the importance of this. When I worked in the steel industry, we were asked quite a lot about what our plan was for the kind of just transition. I think that's kind of fallen away from a lot of investors. So that's fallen away from a lot of investors' lexicon, but it really was important for us as a steel business. The communities that grow up around that steel plant, it's generations of people that have worked there. If you start changing your production methodology, you're impacting the only source of jobs in that region. And so we would not have a license to operate. We wouldn't get the permits if you couldn't demonstrate how you were going to be arranging for those people to still have education, how you were partnering with the local universities. And so when we're engaging with our investee companies as part of their transition planning, one of the pieces we're asking about is what is the social element of this transition plan, because we can't get to a net zero economy if you can't bring the people along with you. So I think that's a really important aspect of it.
Thank you. Erin, do you want to come in as well?
Sorry. I've talked a little bit about the work that we're doing on investing in climate innovation through the JLL Foundation. And I think to us, that's a very direct example. So we target startups that are female founders, founders of color, within the startup ecosystem, founders who may traditionally not have access to capital. And so I think there are even small ways. That's a very big one, which is sharpening your lens on who are the people you're engaging, how is the philanthropy working that you're delivering. I think 15 years ago, that would have been a very different lens, right? So I think there are very small things that you can do that are incredibly impactful. I would say that's the best example I would give.
Thank you. Now we're nearly out of time, and standing between everybody and another fantastic panel. So can I ask each of my panelists to give me one sentence on the most important aspect of climate leadership in 2026? Or one word would also do. But what do you think, if we could do nothing else, we need to see happening right now?
I would say be full of positive energy.
Thank you. Who else can go next? Yeah. Marion.
I'd say step up policy advocacy.
Love that answer.
Balance pragmatism and ambition.
Have courage and invest at pace.
And I think it's different levels of engagement.
Thank you very much. This was fascinating. It was great to hear from everybody on this fantastic panel.